What's going on, guys? My name's Cameron. This is Austin, and welcome to Beyond the Blind. Today we got sorry about that. Today we got our guy Steven on here. Go ahead and shout out your channel, man.
Oh yeah, it's Feel the Spirit on YouTube, and then I got Facebook and Instagram too. All just Feel the Spirit.
It's got a lot of,
He's got a lot of kills.
yeah, a whole lot of kills. It's great videos, man. And with that being said, let's get into it. Let's just kind of get the background of how you got into hunting and just all that good stuff.
Well, the background, I guess, would be just, it was just kind of like a family thing. Everybody on my dad's side of the family always hunted. It was always, me, my sister. I remember the first one I've ever been on was a groundhog hunt whenever I was 3. And, ever since then, as soon as I could start shooting a gun, I was hunting something. And I remember squirrel hunting when I was 4, deer hunting whenever I was 4. Then I started bow hunting whenever I was 9. And it just kept compounding and compounding from there until now.
Where are you originally from?
Originally just from Southwest Virginia, Tazewell, Virginia to be exact, but I've started to kind of venture out and hunt more around rather than just near the house.
I've noticed you hunt a lot of different places right now, man.
Are you hunting a lot of public or private lands?
Growing up, I always just hunted private. It was a big hunting club, and then as I've gotten older, well, actually within the last couple of years, I just kind of started venturing out and hunting public more often, and now it's been really fun, and it's definitely opened the door for a lot more opportunity.
Yeah. That's one thing I definitely, since I just not got into saddle hunting, 2 years ago? 2 years ago, my setup's not great, but with that being said, that's something I definitely want to get into because, I love my private hunting, but I feel like public will give me a little bit more of a experience.
Yeah, right now, private is so hard.
It is.
It's always locked down.
Just not bad, but, it's what it is. With that being said, what is your, I guess, favorite style of hunting? Like ground, saddle, like what's your, if you've got to pick one thing right now, go hunting in the morning, what's your go-to?
It would definitely be like still hunting in the mountains. I'm not a patient person at all. I can't stand to sit in a tree. I can't stand. That's why I like turkey hunt so much, because I can just take off and go. And with deer hunting, when I'm still hunting, now I can move slow, but as long as I'm moving, I'm more focused on what I'm doing. Sometimes I can sit in a tree stand and I'll zone out for 30 minutes, and deer could walk right past me and I'd never have a clue.
It's the worst when you got your phones in your AirPods with you too. I'll listen to music the whole time, or
play
games on the phone or something.
I listened to a podcast one day while I was out there in Giles County on our backpacking trip. It was the last day we were there. It was super windy and it was getting cold and the front was moving in. And I was tired. It was cold. I just warmed up and I just laid back and turned the podcast I had downloaded on my phone and stuck it up to my ear, just laid back and fell asleep.
There's so many times I fell asleep during hunting. That's not even funny.
I've never fell asleep.
Way too many times, dude. Especially from one of the big old spacious buddy blinds too.
Yeah. And what's your favorite kind of setup? Compound bow, longbow, rifle. What's your favorite setups?
If I had to choose one way to hunt for like longevity, it would be muzzleloading, because the one reason I really like the muzzleloader is because if you're up in the mountain and you got a lot of brush to shoot through, if you're shooting a 250 grain bullet opposed to a 150 grain bullet, you have a lot better chance of it getting through the brush and getting to where you need it to be. But I enjoy bow hunting with my traditional gear, but when it comes to, I'm not confident enough up in the mountains to really try to kill a buck with it yet.
Yeah.
So it's mainly just shoot a couple of does for the freezer with for right now until I get more experience. And then I'd love to try to get in there and really try to get one with my bow on some of that big national forest, some of that big mountain stuff.
Yeah.
Now, between the two bow situations, which one's your favorite?
That compound.
Oh,
Or like that good old
def-
stick and arrow?
definitely the traditional bow. There's something different about just drawing back and watching the knot just go
Yeah.
right where I'm looking. And when it piled, I mean, you could tell if anybody wants to know, they can go watch any of the videos. When that arrow goes when I know that arrow's getting ready to go where I want to go,
Yeah.
my first reaction is always, "Oh yeah, baby!" And I can't
Now,
control
I
it.
have watched your videos, man. Like, that's one thing I would like to honestly try. First, I want to get a kill with my bow. That's one thing I've yet to
Oh
do
yeah,
is get a kill with my bow.
yeah,
But that's one thing I do want to try is traditional.
oh
Like,
yeah.
I'd love to get into it.
I always liked it growing up. Like we had the bow that I killed the first two deer with this year. Uh, Dad just had it sitting up on the shelf, and I would just grab it and go shoot it. It's a 50-pound bow, and I was 6, 7 years old
Yeah.
trying to string that thing up and shoot it. I couldn't shoot it, but I always liked just going out there and flinging arrows with it, no matter what. And then I started bow hunting when I was 9. I didn't kill anything until I was 10, but uh, it was like after that, I killed 2 deer that first year, and then after I killed quite a few deer, a couple bear, I was like, I want to start. I still shot it sometimes, but I was just like, I want to start shooting it more often and get used to it. And
Yeah.
then they bought me a bow for Christmas, and I ended up shooting a deer with it and never found it. I hit it too high. It bad shot selection on my part. It was quartering to me, and I was so worked up with that thing in my hand, and I just shot high and hit just in that no man's land high above the shoulder. And then I got another bow, and I finally killed my first one with it. And then after that, it's just been like, that's the bow I want to take.
Yeah.
But realistically, I wouldn't shoot past, well, I say I wouldn't shoot past 40, 50 deer or 40, 50 yards at a deer with a compound. Now I wouldn't. Used to, I would have. I've got a couple stories of some 50-yard bombs whenever I was
You're about
shooting
to
like
get into that. I was gonna
45
say, you're about
pounds.
to get into that one.
Oh yeah, I would shoot like 45 pounds and shooting deer at 45 plus yards. And yeah, those were a little bit iffy. I don't know if I should
Yeah.
have done that or not, but yeah, I mean, with my setup now, I'm fully confident at 30 yards. Like
What are
if
you
a
running
buck
on your
come out
setups now?
this year, I dropped a lot of arrow weight. Last year, I shot a 650 grain arrow they're just regular gold tip traditionals.
Yeah.
And then I put a 100 grain brass insert, and I had a 200 grain DPA single bevel on there. They got 2 different kinds. I can't remember which one it is, but it's the 200 grain single bevel, and it wasn't fast. I mean, you're shooting out of a longbow, 650
Yeah.
grain. It's not gonna be fast, but
Yeah.
when it hit something, it kept going. And this year I dropped down because I didn't want to shoot 650. I wanted to be around 600, but the arrows tuned a little shorter than I thought they were going to, so I'm only shooting like 525 grains. And I've noticed this year 2 of the deer I shot didn't get, like, the arrow buried up past the fletchings, but it didn't come out and stick into the
Yeah.
ground. It just kind of came out and stopped. And they carried it for 10 yards for it. It never fell out. So,
Yeah, and I
I,
like complete pass throughs because
I do too.
oh,
you get that blood out both sides.
Well, I
oh yeah.
couldn't tell you if I liked it or not, but watching videos, I sure do like it.
So are you a fixed blade? You like fixed blades besides
Oh
like
yeah.
mechanical?
Yeah, even if I shot a compound after shooting because growing up I always shot mechanicals. It was always most of the time it's always rage,
Yeah.
and I had a lot of bad experiences with them. I had a lot of great experiences, but I also had a lot of bad experiences.
Yeah.
At one point, I shot a bear straight under me, and the arrow went in about that far and stopped.
Hmm.
And it would have probably been the biggest bear I'd ever killed. And that arrow went in about that far, which realistically is probably not a great idea to shoot straight down like that. But if I had a fixed blade broadhead, it would have went straight through that spine and broke that spine and went down right through the lung, and it would have been a done deal.
Yeah.
But that rage just stopped. But when I first switched to traditional, I was shooting Muzzy 3 blades, and then
Oh,
I
Muzzy.
didn't find those have always been good to me. But then I switched to Simmons, which is a 2-blade broadhead that looks like a battle axe head on the end of an arrow, and they cut a hole, like they really did cut a hole. But I shot a doe with one, and I hit her right in the shoulder blade, and it just stopped. And it's because that broadhead was so wide, it couldn't penetrate. And so then I got to watching a bunch of videos, and I started reading a lot of studies and stuff, and I get really obsessed with stuff like that, and I'll sit there and read into all kinds of crap. But I was like, well, I'm gonna try out these single bells. That's what I read the Ashby reports and all that, and I was like, I'm gonna try out these single bells. And the first year I used them, it was great, and then ever since then, this year I switched to those Magnus single bevels because they're new for this year, but I've shot them, and I don't think I'll shoot another broadhead. Every deer I've shot, the first one, 75, she fell over 75 yards, dead sprint. And then the second one I shot, 60 yards, fell over dead. And then the next one, shot her quartered away, through liver and both lungs. She ran like 50 yards piled up. And that was it. I had one go.
About single bevel broadhead.
Yeah.
I think it's just since you're working with a heavier bevel, it gets so much sharper, and it lacerates everything it comes in contact with. Whereas, maybe a little less quality of a steel, or where it doesn't get as sharp, it might not cut every single one of those little veins and arteries, and you're not gonna fill up with blood as much faster, I guess. But I have noticed, shooting them with the single bevels is they can be so sharp that the deer might hop out the hill and stop, and it has no clue what happened. It'll just stand there. Whereas most of the deer I shot with a mechanical, as soon as that thing hits them, you heard it, and they bolted as fast as they could go. But I did have a lot of luck with the rages, so it's just
Very nice.
it's just it's what I mean. If you have a lot of good experiences with something, I don't say ever change from it. It just depends on what works for you and your style of hunting. That's always been my thing.
Yep.
Now, compound wise, do you still shoot that as often, or?
I don't think I've touched it in 2 years, to be honest with you.
Hang on.
I missed a deer with it 2 years ago, but I finally picked it back up and took it on a trip with me, and had a 4 or 5 pointer. We was out in Eastern Virginia, so we was hunting for that east of Blue Ridge tag, and had a 4-pointer come in. He's a 4 or 5 pointer, but he hit my ground scent and come and circled back and came within 40 yards of me. Well, I ranged the tree. The tree said 40 yards. And he kind of walked like up the hill. He was straight down the hill like this, and he kind of was up the hill from that tree. So I put my 40 pin right on him and shot about that far up top his back.
I've done that a few
I
times.
have too. I did that with my old elite I used to have. That was something. But no, I guess let's go ahead and get into that big old buck you killed at the beginning of the season, man.
Yeah.
Let's hear some stories on that. Where was that located? And not your spot specifically, but like where was that located? And let's hear about that experience.
Well, really, I'd have to start with last year. And even for the last couple of years, I've been telling a lot of people, like, hey, there's these big, huge tracts of public land in Virginia. I mean,
Yeah.
You can go in from a road and walk 50, 60 miles and not touch another road. And I was like, if you could get halfway in between that, them deer have never seen a person before. Like,
Yeah.
I highly doubt they've ever seen somebody. And I was like, if a man could get back in there, you'd pull out a big buck every year because they're not skittish, they're not pressured, they're just natural moving deer. All you'd have to do is find it. And
5
he's going to be,
trails. Yeah.
yeah, he's going to be vulnerable.
Yep.
And then last year I was talking about that to Jack, my buddy that I went with, and he was like, hey, me and my wife are going. She wanted to go on a backpacking trip, so we're going to go in November. And I was like, well, you ain't even got to ask me. I'm going with you. Sorry about it if you don't want me to go, but I'm coming.
Is that
And,
same crew that you killed that last buck with?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
that's what I thought.
And we went out there, hiked in it was about 2.5, 3 miles from the road. And I didn't bring any water. I brought what was in my water bladder, and I drank about half of it on the way there. It was super dry last year, so there was no water up on the mountain at all. And I went to go look for water, and as I was looking for water, we jumped 2 does on the way in. I was like, I'm just going to go back, go to where those 2 does were, kind of walk around, just look around. It's the first evening we're here. I got like 2 hours before dark, might as well. So I just walked up there. I had seen a big rub, and I walked over to that rub and went to mark it on my phone. And that's when I heard the grunting, and I was like, oh crap, here comes a buck with a doe. And they come running within 30 yards of me, but it was so thick where I was standing, I couldn't see the deer standing there. All I could tell where he was standing because I seen him run up there, and then I didn't see him move past that point. So I threw the gun up, and I could see tines, but I couldn't tell anything. And eventually they went on, and I just pushed right through the middle of that brush and tried to get behind them. I was like, there's 3 deer running here. You know, they're just going to think I'm another deer running or something. There's a bunch of racket going on. And I mean, that thing was grunting. That's the deepest grunt I've ever heard. And I got out, and there's this old field that they used to cut up there. And half of it was like waist high, and then half of it was like head high. Well, I'm just standing there like not knowing where these deer went because I can't hear them running anymore. And all of a sudden I look up and I just see nothing but a frame and tine sticking up coming across the field in front of me 70 yards. And I was like, oh crap. And I threw the gun up and I was shaking so bad. I was like, I wouldn't hit him. There ain't no way. So I got up against a tree and he was turned straight away from me. And then he started to quarter away just ever so slightly. And I could have tucked the bullet in there, you know, that muzzleloader I'm shooting within that of the dot. So I know if I'd have put the crosshairs where I wanted to go, and I've killed deer like that with it before, quartered away that hard. But I just figured he'd turn on broadside. And that there was a 4-pointer that was running the doe, and he had got her away from him. Well, he took off running her again. Well, the big buck heard him and turned and just started running straight across that field. And in my head, this was 2 minutes, but in reality, it was like 5 seconds, maybe. And I was about to shoot him in the neck as he was hopping through that grass, but he hopped in behind a tree on his last bound, and I couldn't squeeze a shot up. Now I'm glad I didn't take the bad shot because, you know, knowing now, my buddy killed him the next morning. But the way it ties into everything is I was up on top of the mountain, and they were coming from below me and coming up to me. Well, the next day when my buddy killed him, they killed him about 3/4 of a mile from where I had seen him, but on the same level of them coming up to where I was at, like they was just making a big circle. Well, in the middle of that big circle, there's a big laurel thicket that runs out through these 2 big hollows. There's a finger ridge that comes off of it. Well, I was like, they had to be coming from that area. So the next evening, or that evening that he killed the deer, I walked down over there. And when I did, there was a laurel thicket right there with a flat that comes down about the same elevation line. We were seeing the deer and killing deer. And then there was a laurel thicket that run the edge of it. And I jumped a deer there I seen 2 deer there that evening. And then I seen another deer there that morning. Well, then we had to pack up and leave, but me and him went back in rifle season, and that's the same spot I hunted. And there was deer there every single day I went there. I never went there and didn't see a deer. But I walked over in the laurel thicket, and there was a huge, just open spot right in the edge of it. And that open spot had scrapes big as around as you hoodie a car. I mean, they were huge. And I was like, there's another buck that size in here using this. Well, it had snowed that morning, and it was freshened up. There was no snow in it. Tracks. It was warm. It was still dirt. It was literally 0 degrees that night while I was walking around. And I was like,
he was like, I got to go fresh
Yep.
up.
Yep.
And he had every single one of those freshened up. I mean, he had worked that area. But I went there the next morning, and it was so cold. It was like -40 with the wind chill. It was so cold that I literally got to like mid-stage hypothermia, and I was like, all right, I'm leaving, because I had stopped.
That's when the deer.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
No, there was a doe bedded down right in front of me. That's why I didn't want to move, because she was bedded right beside that scrape, and I was like, man, if he comes check that scrape, he's going to hit her, and it's going to be game on. And I stopped shivering, and I started like having muscle convulsions. I was like, all right, yeah, I'm out of here.
Do for some deer.
And
Oh,
he was
yeah.
ground sitting at that time, wasn't he? Well, kind of like a walking stock almost.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I've found works the best for me. I've killed most of my big deer just I just call it wandering up on them.
Yeah.
Like, I just kind of walk through the mountain, and eventually you cover enough ground, you're going to walk up on a deer, and then, you eventually walk up on a hot doe, and then the buck's going to be there with the doe.
Yeah.
Or you find a nice spot like you found, and you can eventually put your tree stand in. Or you just go set rifle hunt.
Yeah, honestly.
That's one thing I've found, and that's how I killed that deer this year, is when we went back, I went and worked my way there. The elevation line we seen all the deer was 3,900 feet last year. So this year, when we went back, I was like, I'm going to work around 3,900 feet. I'm just going to drop down to that elevation, and I'm going to follow it all the way around the mountain. And pretty much I just kind of worked my way real slow. We didn't get to hunt the first evening because it was raining. Then the first morning it was raining. And we didn't leave camp the first morning until like 10:30. And I eventually just started working my way out through the mountain. I hit that elevation line, just kind of slowly worked my way out through it, and I followed a bunch of rubs. And I kind of did a few little grunting sequences trying to, maybe grunt something in if it was cruising along looking for does. But I followed that rub line, and I jumped a deer. I never could tell what it was. I'd gotten to some real thick stuff, and I jumped it 20 yards in front of me, but I never could tell what it was. And I sat down for a moment. Now, I know I don't tell like everybody this, because it's a lot of people think I'm crazy, but I sat down in a tree after I jumped the deer, and I sat down, and I wanted to get to that spot I had in mind anyway, but my ribs started to twitch, and for whatever reason I was like,
we're tingling.
I was like, yeah, I was like, yeah, I was like, that must be my sign to get up, keep moving. So I just immediately got right back up and kept on walking. Had I not done that, I wouldn't have killed the buck.
Yeah.
He would have been past the spot before I got there. And I went, and the Appalachian Trail actually runs right above and then cuts down in front of where I was and where the buck was. And I hit the Appalachian Trail and snuck around because, it's matted down. People are walking all the time. It's matted down. You can slip up it quietly. And I slipped up it, hit the holler, went down in that holler, and then basically just got to where I was right at the edge of that flat. And I could see that big open spot in Laurel Thicket and where the Laurel Thicket ran out into the flat. And I just got to where I could see that up on that little embankment and just sat down in a tree. And I snuck down there. But once I got down there, didn't see or spook anything. It was 1 o'clock in the day. I was like, they probably ain't gonna move till later. It's a warmer day and everything. It's been raining. Once it dries up, the sun comes out good, and the sun was just coming out. I was like, yeah, I just started being loud again. I sat down, scraped out a little bit. I never really scrape out where I sit at trees. I know a lot of people who always do, but
I've always done that.
I have too.
I don't think I've only ever scraped out like 1 or 2 trees that I've sat at. I've never even thought about doing it, to be honest with you,
Hey,
until
I'm a big fella and I like to move. And
See, I like
kind of like the smell from it too. I feel like it kind of blocks my scent a little
Oh
bit.
yeah. Oh, it opens up that
fresh
earthy
dirt
scent.
smell. Yeah.
But yeah, I just kind of was loud. I kind of kicked some limbs and stuff. I'll move the limbs and stuff in the way if they're there.
Yeah.
But most of the time I just sit on top of the leaf litter. But I sat down on top of it, got my pack off, got my tripod out, set everything up. I was clicking and clacking. It was a little windy, but I mean, I wasn't being quiet. I opened my backpack, grabbed me a granola bar. I'm sitting there, and no sooner than I took a couple bites of it, I heard the deer. I heard them running, and my first instinct was, crap, because I don't. When I'm in the mountain like that, I won't walk with my wind going straight to where I'm going, but I'll go with it facing the wind can be blowing like this, and I'll still just keep moving this way. I've never really paid too much attention to wind when I'm up in the mountain, but a lot of the times, if you don't have a predominant wind, it might be blowing like this up to the top of that ridge that you're walking beside. But when it gets up to that ridge, it might be funneling back down, or it might be funneling down. You never really know where the thermals are going to go in the mountains. So
this might sound bad, man, but I've never paid attention to wind until this year.
Yeah.
I've never actually paid any attention to it until this year.
A big buck always finds the wind.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It's like they know.
Yeah, and that's kind of bad though. 'Cause I mean, we said in the first podcast, I was self-taught in all my hunting.
Yeah.
That YouTube and just talking with friends and stuff like that. That's how I came up in my upcoming on hunting, and I was never taught how to go off of wind and just. YouTube is where I got that from.
Yeah.
And I was like, let's try it one day, and it actually does come in handy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of deer I've killed with a bow sitting at an oak tree, and my setup, I might set up at a real hot feed tree, and I'll set up in a tree right here, and the wind be blowing this way, just slightly off to where I expect the deer to come from. It might just be barely going past them, but I've had a lot of deer come in right up the edge of that wind tunnel, and they never smell me.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what was happening when I killed that buck. Was I was sitting right at the edge of that, and the wind was blowing straight up that flat this way. But I expected the deer to kind of be in front of me.
Yeah.
I didn't expect them to come that way, but I knew if they come out, that there was a good chance they came from the top of the mountain down, or they came out and up into that wind channel. So whenever I first sat down, they started running, and I was like, crap, they could have smelled me. But then, I don't know, it wasn't 20 seconds. I turned my camera on, but I didn't start recording or nothing. And I could definitely tell it was like you could hear them spinning around in the leaves. And I was like, oh crap, that's a buck chasing it though, I guarantee it. He never grunted or nothing. Yeah, he was just they were just starting. His hocks weren't even peed on or nothing. They were just kind of that light brownish color. They weren't black where he had been peeing on. So he just, I mean, they were a little yellow, but
Yeah.
he wasn't like he had stink. He wasn't like he had rut, but he was kind of pushing her a little bit. Uh, and eventually the doe comes across, and that's when I spin the camera around and get ready. You know, I'm sitting on the ground. I'm sitting up against on my butt up against a tree. So I just kind of got the gun up on my knee, and I'm sitting there like this, and got my elbow braced on my knee, just gun up.
Yeah.
And when you're up in that mountain like that, it's just, you don't have a lot of big opens. It's mainly just like, hey, you got two trees like this. When he comes in between it, that's your shot. That's what you got.
Yep.
And so I just kind of pointed the camera in that direction. I had the GoPro on the gun. I just turned it on and said, I'll get what I get. And the doe came out, ran through, and then she stopped. And then he came through, but it was before I could move the gun back. He was already through the opening, and I couldn't see what he was. Well, then she finally comes out way to the left of me and starts working up towards my wind right at the edge of that laurel thicket, like I figured they would. They came right out in that big open spot. Well, she's about to get into my wind, and at that point, I forgot about the wind. I'm just like, what's that second deer? Like, is that second deer a buck? I still didn't know if it was maybe two does running from
Yeah.
me, you know, what it was. And eventually, she went to feeding, and I was like, she's not spooked at all. And he came up there and popped out to the opening, and I could see he had a rack. And I was like, okay, I'm going to shoot him. Like, you know, it's a rack buck. That's all I want, is just to kill a rack buck up here backpacking. Well, he went in behind a tree, and the camera can see him, but I can't.
Yeah.
And then he finally comes out behind the tree. Well, now the camera can't see him, but I can. But I had the GoPro on, and there was a little tree right here, a big tree right here, a log at the bottom, and then a dead stub sticking out like this. And I mean, it was a hole like that big to shoot through. And it was close to him though, but I had like a small hole to shoot through. And he had his neck stretched out in it, and he was sitting there smelling at that doe and moving his head around. I could see his antlers moving. But once I seen that he had a rack, I didn't pay attention to how big he was. He's got a rack, I'm going to shoot the deer when I get a chance. So I just had the crosshairs locked into that opening, just waiting on him to take a step. I mean, the crosshairs were just doing this.
Yeah.
And
They were dancing.
I was like, oh crap, because I was up on my knee like this, and my whole body was shaking.
And them bucks always find a way.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
They will take so long to get in.
Oh, yeah.
A doe will be like,
Yes.
they're there.
Yeah.
A buck will be like 2 miles away, and you just see him barely sneaking
Oh,
to you.
yeah. Yeah, she was standing right wide open where I could have shot her. But he stood there with his head just kind of barely sticking out that opening. And I could see his neck, but that dead stub went across his neck like right here. And I could see this part of his neck, and I put the crosshairs on him. And I was so worked up, I was like, I'm going to shoot him. And, I mean, the thing's neck was just big round. I mean, it would have been hard to miss it, really. But I was like, and then I told myself, you can't really hear me in the camera. I figured you would, but I went, just calm down, like out loud. And I just kind of was like, all right, as soon as he steps to this opening, I'm going to shoot him. Well, finally, he took 2 steps, come right out in that opening. And I mean, at that point, all I can see is the deer in the opening. And I'm like, you know, I just got to shoot. Well, when I shot, he just kind of run out to where the doe was, stopped, looked around, and then ran back in the laurel. And I was like, oh, God, I hit some brush or something on the way there and missed it. And I reloaded, and I was sitting there, and I was like, well, let me jump up over there, and I'll go run and look and make sure I missed him or whatever. And I was getting ready to get up and run over there, and my buddy messaged me, and he was like, hey, man, I heard the bullet, like, whoever shot, I heard the bullet hit. And I was like, okay, well, that's good. So I talked to him on the phone, and I even told him on the phone, like, yeah, it's like a 14, 15, 16-inch 8-pointer, it's good little buck. And I walked over to where I shot him, and it was blood everywhere. I was like, oh, I killed him dead.
Out them.
And I started tracking him, and I mean, it was blood everywhere. I could follow it for 30 yards. I didn't have to run. I didn't even have to walk through the thick stuff he went through. I just walked around it, and I could see the blood from 30 yards away. And finally, I got to like 100 yards, and I was like, man, is this thing ever going to die? He's bleeding like crazy. And I'm like, I couldn't hit him too low or too high because I could only see this much of it. You know,
Yeah.
I was like,
That's
I
when the
know.
panic kicks in. You're
Yes, it
like,
Oh
does.
yeah. I was like, I know I could only see ribs. I was like, but there's this much blood, he's still going. And I was like, huh. I was like, well, he's got to be dead. So I just kept on going and going and going. And then finally, when I looked up, I could see the sun glowing through them laurels on top of his antler, and I could see where his beam come up. It just curled way past his nose, and it was about
Mm-hmm.
that big around. And I went, oh crap! Like I had no clue. I thought it was like I thought it was something like this deer right here. I don't
Yeah.
know if you can see it. I thought it was something like that. Shot it, and then I walked over to it, and I was like, oh crap! This is 150-inch buck. I was like, I thought this thing, 110, 120-inch 8-pointer, I thought it was a good deer.
Now,
And then I
did you
walked
not
over
get
to
him
it.
mounted or anything like that?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna get both of them mounted. I don't
Yeah.
know how I'm gonna be able to afford it, but I'm thinking about getting both of them mounted. I don't know where I'm gonna put them either. I don't, I got two
You
bucks
ain't
in
got no room
here.
for it, buddy.
Oh,
You ain't got no room for it.
I got 2 bucks in here. I got those 2 bucks. I got this turkey, the two skull mounts, a bear. I've got 3 bucks out here in the hallway, 2 bucks out there in the back. I had a skull mount right here beside my door, but it got knocked off the wall in the middle of the night, and now I've got it out in a building, and I've got turkey fans, and it's just the whole conundrum.
Yeah.
I don't know where to put nothing. I've got skulls laying everywhere. I have no clue what to do with.
Now,
So,
the one that you're talking about right now, what did it end up being?
I haven't scored it like professionally or
Yeah.
anybody that really, is like experienced at it, I guess. But
Yeah.
a couple buddies of mine came over. He killed a bear and come and dropped it off to me, and they kind of just roughly scored it, and they scored it like 143 or something like that.
Yeah.
But they also didn't even have like the flimsy tapes, the roll up tapes. It was just like an
Yeah.
actual tape measure. Uh, so I'd say now if he had the symmetrical tine because he had a brow tine broken off, and if he wouldn't have broke that brow tine off, he'd probably been 155 or better because that brow tine was 6.5 inches long, and then the symmetrical tine on the other side would have gave him an extra 5 inches.
Yeah.
So that's, an extra 10 inches. If he'd had those points, he'd probably been 160. But
Oh, nice.
I'd say it'll be 150, 145, 150, depending on how much that missing brown time affects him. But
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not gonna look at the net score, the Boone Crockett score. I'm just gonna go off like your gross score, your Buckmasters,
Yeah.
just the total inches of antler, not the deductions and all that stuff. Because he'd have a lot of deductions. He's not like perfectly even on both sides. So.
Yeah. How to get you to send me a picture of that one again? 'Cause I know I've seen it
Oh,
before, but I can't remember.
oh, oh, I never took the pictures. A lot of people ask me which buck was bigger, but when you see the pictures of the 2 bucks in the freezer, oh, the one I killed at Giles swallows the 10 point.
Really?
And yeah, there's a huge difference because the
And
one
that
I
was a nice buck
killed,
too, though.
yeah,
oh
both.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, the second one will go 135, 140 just because of all the time length that he
Yeah.
had. But the Giles one compared to you can definitely tell. I mean, the one I killed in Giles at the bases, I'm like barely getting my middle finger to my thumb. Like the mass that he's got. He carries it all the way through his horn.
Yeah.
But I know his main beams, they measured it at like 24-inch maybe. So I never really, I haven't ever seen but two deer above 140 inches. And depending on if this second one I killed goes over 140 inches, then that'll only be the third deer. But this is the first year I've really been like, all right, I'm going to go hunt the mountains, public land.
Yeah.
Last year I struggled, but I hunted more cattle pasture, river type country. I never actually went up in the mountain other than when we went to Giles backpacking last year. And I just I didn't put the time in on public. And it's just like the impatient thing when it comes to sitting in a tree stand. I can't stand to sit out and watch a big field all day. Like I just get super impatient. I want to, go walk somewhere else. And I mean, I've killed a lot of big deer that way. I've killed this deer right here that way. I killed this 8-pointer right here, this 8-pointer. That buck, I killed the same. I killed all these bucks in my room here the same way.
Yeah.
Just sitting out and being able to see a bunch. But it's not really like I don't excel at it. I excel when I get up in a mountain, and I guess I just kind of learned to customize my hunting style to my personality, I guess, is what the best way to explain it would be. But I'm also pretty open-minded. Like, I'll hunt out of a tree if I feel like it's going to work better. I'll go sit in a tree.
Yeah.
I'm willing to put in the time up in the tree. I don't like to. I can usually sit comfortably without wanting to jitter around. My biggest problem in that saddle is swinging back and forth.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Oh man, I can't keep myself from doing it. I'll be sitting there swinging, like swaying just back and forth, and I'm like, oh, I gotta take that out. Make it.
I live in West Virginia, so I can bait deer. We put feeders up and stuff.
Yeah.
And I've set over bait for years and years, and I've never killed or seen a big buck on corn. They've always been chasing does. And this year, I finally got into saddle hunting because of a buddy of mine, John Mabry. He was like, "Man, you need to get a saddle." And Cameron had a saddle and stuff, and I was like, and every year John would go find a trail somewhere and go get on a trail up on top of a ridge or something, and he would always kill bucks. And I'm like, yeah. And then my dad, he's like, man, we're going to have to get off bait and get on these trails. And then the first time I go and get off go away from, I'm like 100 yards from our feeder. I go get in the saddle. I'm watching these two roads with scrapes on it and seen 2 8-points in like 45 minutes. And I'm like, man, I'm going to have to get off the bait. Because everybody's like, man, you get to bait deer, blah, blah, blah. I've never killed any deer on bait.
It's good for does, like if you wanted to kill some does, but when it comes to big bucks, I've never really heard many people killing big deer off bait. And I mean, sometimes, they'll get a little hungrier one day or something and come out in daylight to a corn feeder, but a lot of the people
want to do that today. He disappeared all November, and then today, out of all days, he comes to the corn pile and he's standing in the corn pile, and I'm like, man, where was this at during November?
Heck, I hunt in Virginia. Well, we live in the same town, but when I hunt in Virginia, I can't bait. Yeah. So I've got my food plot. I put my food plot in very late. It was like a month before season this year. Yeah. It was very, very late. This year, I mean, I was constantly getting does or getting a couple of spikes or little small 4-points, and then not this week, but the week prior to this week, so 2 weeks ago, that whole week I got every single big buck I got on camera last year. That was actually up in the woods on trail camera. Every single one of those big bucks came back on to my food plot. It was a 10, an 8, and 2 6s. Now those 2 6s, they come back kind of regularly almost anymore, but it's right at dark. Right at dark.
And that's another thing I've noticed, like on bait and stuff. you can get these young 3-year-old deer, little 8 points. They'll come to the bait, but when you get to actual like mature buck, like the one that he killed, it's hard to get a big. And even when they do, they'll stand 50 yards behind the corn pile, and their heads are in the air, and they're smelling. And then as soon as they get in the corn, they're just like, nah, and they just walk away. It's hard to kill a big mature buck on any kind of feed like that.
Yeah,
that's one thing I've never really experienced or experimented with because growing up here we couldn't do it. But I mean, you drive 20 minutes up the road across in West Virginia, it's legal and how a lot of people, hunt for deer. And it's something I mean, even looking at deer on natural feed, if you look at a group of does, you have an old doe come into an oak tree, she's back away from the other does, checking everything, and then she moves into that oak tree. So
we've seen that day we went hunting.
Yeah.
So they know.
Not to interrupt you, we can come back to this subject. Let's get you walked up on your buck.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Back to that.
Yeah. So when I walked up to the buck, we walked up to it. My buddy and his wife, they went the opposite way from camp. I walked back towards the truck. It was about a mile and a half back towards the truck to where I killed a deer, and they went about 700 yards past the opposite side. Well, luckily I just got a call to go through and got to talk to him, and I ran back up there to where I had service. And I was like, hey, I lied. It's a friggin' hammer. Like, I thought it was a good, young buck. I was like, this thing's 7, 8 years old, and he's massive. And he was, all right. He was like, well, we'll walk our way over to you. We ain't seen no sign or nothing. I was like, all right. So they come back to me. Last time it's been 2 hours, and I'm sitting there trying to take pictures of this deer, and its neck was this bigger. I mean, that's the heavy. I've killed the deer I was talking about that I had skull mounted and hanging right here that fell off the wall. That one weighed 209 dressed out with, guts out. This deer that I killed out there was easily 35, 40 pounds heavier than that deer. And that deer was 209 pounds dressed out. I mean, it wasn't, see, the one Jack killed last year, that big 8-pointer that got away from me and he ended up killing. It was long. It was long, it was lean, it was just wide, had big old long legs. It looked like it looked like a Clydesdale horse. I mean, it was big, right? But this one was short and stocky. Yeah. And when we hung him up in a tree to skin him, because I carry a pulley with me, and this year I drug. I don't think I cut a deer up in the woods this year, but other than that buck. But most of the time, I would cut deer up in the mountain. If I'm way away from the truck, I'd just cut them up. But I take a pulley with me, so that way I can just hoist them up in a tree, cut them up in a tree. It makes it 20 times easier than trying to cut them on the ground. I just got tired of shooting deer 2 miles from the truck trying to drag them back out.
Oh, yeah.
And, but we hung that deer up, and its ribs, I felt like I was standing 5 foot away from Jack, and we were both cutting down both sides of its ribs, cutting the hide down to where we was going to tape him out to get for the mount. And, I felt like I couldn't even, most time, if you're sitting there, you can almost just wrap your arms around a deer like this.
Yeah.
Even a mature buck in some farm country, 150 pounds, about as big as they'll get, 150, 175. This deer was 250 pounds. No joke, no doubt, no lie, me being honest. I know some people that say 250 pounds that might be over-exaggerating a little bit, but this one here was, it was 250 pounds.
It's not picking me up.
Well, my dad shot a doe this year during doe day, and I was like, man, I was trying to drag it up a little bitty bank, and I'm like, this thing's full of lead. It felt like it weighed 250 pounds.
Oh, yeah. That's the one thing I hate about dragging a bear is...
God, yes.
It's almost like the bear is the same weight as the buck, but it's harder to drag them.
Yes.
I don't know why, but we were last year. It was funny. When he killed his buck, he was like, "Yeah, you know, it'd be some good pictures if we drug his thing up and hung it up at camp." I just looked at him and was like, "Yeah, go ahead." I was like,
Go right ahead, buddy.
Good luck.
I'll watch you do it.
I was like, nope, it ain't, because we were like 750 yards, and it would have just been gradually uphill with big rocks and stuff sticking up. I was like, no, ain't happening. It's not
That's the
happening
thing
at all.
about hunting like these mountains.
Yes.
Dude, and that's another reason about bait deer. You're like, man, it's straight up, straight down.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if I put some corn out, I'll get lucky, but they always make you want to come find them.
They do.
You know, you go straight
You're
down a
going to end
mountain.
up having to go find them.
Yeah, it's either go straight down a mountain or straight up a mountain, go down a cliff, something. Around here, it's brutal.
Oh yeah, it can get real
that
bad.
flat ground one of these days.
Yeah, I like watching Bomar, like Kip Campbell, and I see him hunting these big food plots and stuff. I'm like, man, that'd be so nice to be able to ride my four-wheeler up to it, throw it on the four-wheeler, and take
It'd be amazing.
It's nice hunting out in eastern Virginia, because where we're hunting, you don't ever go going 400 or 500 yards from a road, and it's flat. I mean, I cover 15 miles in there, and I feel like I walk too. Like it's just like sometimes I get up in this steep mountain here, and I'm like, man, I had to walk friggin' 10 miles a day. And I look at my phone, it was like 6.
Yeah.
But I'm out there, I'm like, well, maybe I covered like a mile and a half of ground, because I do a lot of. That's one reason I got in the saddle. I won't get into it because it's a big can of worms, but one reason I got in the saddle.
That's another video, though.
Yeah.
One reason I got in the saddle is I like being mobile, especially when I'm bow hunting. I like to be on the hottest, freshest sign, so I like to cover a bunch of ground and I don't like to set up on a spot where I have to question whether I'm going to see a deer. I like to set up on a spot where I know a deer's going to be here. So I cover a lot of ground until I find that spot that's like, oh, hey, they're going to be here. They were here this morning, last night. They're going to be here tonight again. And so I would go cover just ground and ground and ground. I'd walk for 4 hours. And be like, man, I probably covered about 2 miles. I'd look at my phone and say I'd walk like 8 miles. And I'm like, dude, it's been 4 hours. Like, how in the world did I cover 8 miles in 4 hours? But it's just flat, and you can just run up in creek bottoms and then run down the ridge top, get back in the truck, go to the next creek hollow, and just.
I like that.
Yeah.
And it's flat, it's easy walking, and like that, the buck I killed out there, you know, it's just flat, easy walking. Is probably, if you walk straight in from the truck to the spot I killed a deer, it's only like 50 yards. But there's a big pine thicket right there, so typically we go around it and circle around that pine thicket and go in there to where I killed the deer. But yeah, it's compared to hunting in the mountains. Like, we get that 1 or 2 weeks of real easy hunting, and then we immediately go in and backpack 2-3 miles in on public land in the middle of the mountain. And it's like you're just riding real smooth and easy. You know, you're hunting in the morning, coming out, sleeping on a couch in a trailer, and then going to hunting all day long, climbing steep mountains, you know, straight up and down, and sleeping in a tent. That, because a lot of people talk about, you know, you don't need like big expensive gear to go do stuff like that. But I will tell you, if you're gonna do anything, make sure you have a warm sleeping bag.
Yeah.
I froze to death Tuesday night. Like,
this is definitely one video. That's like that whole backpacking situation.
Mm-hmm.
That's a whole another video that I definitely want to get you on.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we can continue to talk about it now, but that's definitely one video I do want to get you on, because I'd love to, not only just for information for us, because I've never done it, just for information for the people as well, because I know so many people that's been like, oh, I want to do this, like, I want to go backpacking, and me and my buddy I was talking about it not too long ago, and I mean, I feel like that's going to be a really good video to get into, but go back to what you were saying, man.
Oh yeah, it's definitely, it's my preferred way to hunt now.
Yeah.
But if you're gonna do it, buy the correct sleeping bag, because I froze in it. I had a Ozark Trail 0 to 10. It's not 0 to 10. Maybe 0 to 10 if you're sitting in the living room, but it was not 0 to 10 the mountain.
Let's do this. Suck.
It was bad. I mean, I woke up. We went to bed that night because I had to hike the deer out. Because where I killed him at in that laurel thicket, we packed him. Realistically, I should have walked back up towards the trail and hung the friggin' thing in a tree, and then come and got it on the way out the next day. I packed it a mile away from the truck and back to camp. And then hiked, and then I just, we kind of sat around camp, ate, did chit chatted, whatever. And everybody was tired like 8:30. They had walked a crap ton. I walked a crap ton, then killed a deer, cut it up, packed it back to camp. And I was like, well, it was like 8 o'clock. We're like, yeah, let's go to bed. So we went to bed. Well, the temperature got down about 10 degrees colder that night. And I had all my clothes on, and I was down in that sleeping bag. And the most miserable part is you can't ever stay asleep when it gets that cold, because you can't lay on your back or you'll get too cold. So you got to lay on your side or your stomach, curl up. And then when you do, something starts hurting and it wakes you up. Then you got to wake up, roll over to the other side, and do it again. And oh man! And then I woke up at like 4 o'clock, and I just had to lay there and be cold for another 2 hours till I got daylight. It was. I
Then
turned
you have
on.
no sleep, and then guess what? You walking 5 more miles, go get you.
Yeah. And then I ended up getting up, and because that was the night. Because that next morning I hiked that deer out, because it was cold that second day we were there, but it wasn't cold enough. Like, the meat was fine. I would have been fine with hanging the meat up in a tree, letting the air get to it, and, being good to go. Yeah. But that hide, I knew would hold that heat, and I didn't want that cake to ruin. But my dad was like, yeah, I'll come up here and get it. So I was like, okay. So I'm like, just meet me at the trailhead. Well, he leaves, he's like, I'll leave here at the house about 10 o'clock. It's like 2.5 hour drive. Well, he's like, at 9:30, he's like, yeah, I'm on the way. And I'm like, oh crap, I'm sitting there up against a tree, boots off, I don't even have nothing in my backpack. So I'm like jumping up, I throw the deer head back in the bag, throw it down in the pack, throw the deer meat, the stuff I wanted to hike out, and I take off walking. I'm walking fast, I got 80 pounds worth of deer on my back. I'm not walking slow. And I jump a deer. Well, I stand there for a minute, and I'm like, well, I don't know what it was, so I just kept on moving. Well, I jump it again, and it runs out there and stops. And I throw the gun up, and I can see the deer standing there. And I could have swore when it moved its head, I mean, it was super brushy where I was at. I was in a bunch of small trees, and I swore when it moved its head, it had a rat. And I was like, God, I'm about to have to pack another one out, and I took that hammer back. And it was pretty brushy, and I was like, I better wait. So I waited a little bit. He came out on into the opening, and he was a spike. But I could see him spikes glowing in the sun, and it looked like bases of antlers moving. And I thought it was like a frame of a rat. God almighty, I was like, I'm going to be cutting up another deer. I'm going to have to pack 2 deer out here. I'm going to be out of tags already. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do here. Because they jumped another 16, 17-inch 8-point on their way to me. So I knew there was another buck in there like that. If I'd have seen him, I'd have shot him. So there wasn't no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But I was like, oh crap, now what am I going to do? But I ended up packing the deer all the way out to the truck, and he took it, and I sat at the truck for a minute. And then the only place I had good service was up on this big cliff right there, so I walked over to it and got some service for a couple hours, and then I just kind of worked my way back into where I was seeing deer and just kind of hunted my way back all the way to camp, and didn't see nothing else that evening. But then that next day, it was super. That night is the night that I froze and the temperature dropped. And then midday, a big front moved in, and that's whenever I walked over and I got back in that spot where I killed that buck at, because I was like, girl, they're still going to use this. I was like, and if that doe's hot, she's liable to pick up another buck somewhere. And so I just kind of walked over, that wind was blowing. It was cold. I'd been cold all day. I had just warmed up, and I laid back up against a tree, and I had my face mask like this, and I shoved my phone down in it, turned Bear Grease podcast on, and laid back. Pretty much went to sleep for about 2 hours, and then lifted up, and I mean, wind was blowing. You could tell the front was coming in.
Yeah.
And there's a weather station just down below where we're hunting out there. And Jack checked the weather station, and they were like, yeah, it's 100% chance of rain and like a 20-degree temperature drop top.
Oh, that's the best.
And I was like, oh, yeah, freezing rain. It's great. And I was like, he's like, yeah, we probably ought to leave. I was like, yeah, it sounds like a good idea. So by the time I walked back to camp and packed up, it was dark. And we had to walk out in the dark. And I just, when we hit that Appalachian Trail that we walked in on, I just put my head down looking at the trail, and I didn't look up until I got back to the truck because I was carrying
I never
80.
I've been terrified.
Oh, it was 80-pound pack, and I had only ate a granola bar all day long.
Yeah.
And that's all I had to eat. And I had that 80-pound pack on my back, and I was feeling real, like, your sugar's low, feeling real weak. And I shoved a granola bar and a piece of jerky down my throat, and I just took off walking. And I got to that trail, and I was like, I know if I stop, I'm not getting back up. So I just kept going and going and going and going and going, and finally I got all the way to where the hill turns down and goes down into the road. And I finally looked up, and I was like, oh, my God, I was dying. I had stopped. I just kept going. I had all my clothes on. I felt like I was in a sweatsuit, like he was trying to cut water weight or something. Oh, it was horrible.
See, that's I want to do public next year.
I want to too. I want to get a better saddle set before I do that though.
I want to do it, but I think about it. I'm like, man, if I go on some public land, I'm gonna have to walk like 5 miles back there. And I think about it more and more, and I'm like, man, I got to get in shape before I do something like that.
Oh yeah.
If I do it, if I was to do something like that, like backpack like you do, I gotta go with two, 3, 4 guys. Cause I'm be honest with you, I'm gonna act like I'm a big bad scary. No, I'm terrified. Cause I ain't gonna lie to you, man. I ain't afraid of the dark. I'm afraid of what's in the dark.
It don't really bother me. Like I don't know, like a bear in the dark doesn't. I don't know. It still doesn't really bother me unless I've shot it and I don't know whether it's dead or not. I'm like tracking it, and I'm like this thing could still be alive, and now it's pissed off. Like it might not be a good idea.
Yeah.
But I can tell you one story. It was opening morning to archery, and I was walking into my stand, and there was 4 bear up in one tree. And I walked right beside that tree, and they started coming down out of that tree at like Mach 90. And I just heard it sounded like the world was coming apart. And I jumped and turned and looked, and I could see the outline of a bear coming down the tree, and it hit the ground, took off running. And here come another one, and then another one, and then another one. And they all took off running across the field, and I was like, crap. I was like, them things probably, because I was like 50 yards from my stand. If I would have got in there, they'd have probably come down out of that tree. I don't know why they was up in that tree, but I don't know if they heard me walking in and, run up the tree. I don't know. But, yeah, I thought it was like coons or something until they got like down the tree, and then I could see something about 5 foot tall coming down that tree, and I was like, that's not a coon. I was like, that's a friggin' bear. And it startled me a little bit, but once I realized that it was just a bear and they were, leaving out there, go. But I've had a lot of bear like arm's length from me, and I've had a couple. One of them was really close. I had my feet on a log, and it come up the log. I mean, it wasn't a big bear, like 7,500 pounds.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, it's probably like a legal bear to kill, but it was like right on the verge.
It's about like that one I had about 5 yards from me, like, what was it, like a week and a half ago when I was in my ground blind.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing about over here on these mountains is we're eat up with bear.
Oh, There's bear everywhere you
It's crazy.
And I think that's a big reason too. It's hard to bait deer.
It is.
Because people say that bear don't mess up deer hunt, but bear definitely messes up.
Oh yeah, they do.
Because
Yeah,
when you
I've
put
noticed.
that bait in there, it's like early season when it's super hot, we'll have buck 20, 30 bucks in there. As soon as the bears show up, bucks disappear.
Yep.
Oh
And
yeah.
it just, and I think that's why when December hits and it gets cold, the bucks love. I know it gets cold and they need food and stuff, but I think that's another reason too, because the bear scent's gone, the bear's gone.
That was almost one reason why I almost didn't want to put that food plot in, man, because like when I put the food plot in, and it actually started growing and everything, getting all green and everything started actually growing. I was getting a lot of bear in my in the food plot, and when I came to a realization of every time this bear came, all my deer did. I kid you not, a bear could come in tonight. I wouldn't have deer at my food plot for 2 days.
Yeah.
I came to the realization that my deer would disappear for 2 to 3 days, then finally slowly come back, but they'd be so skittish it wouldn't be funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed a change in behavior compared to when bear in a spot, and then you go and you shoot the bear that's coming eating those acorns. Then the deer are like so much more comfortable and they start flooding in.
Yeah.
But when the bear's there, they're skittish. They don't come in as much. They don't like them.
No, I've noticed that too. Because I've had been hunting and a coyote would run by, and then right before dark, a deer would walk the same trail. It's like a coyote don't bother them, but if a bear's in there, deer is like.
Listen, early season this year, it was right as soon as season started, like right after Urban. I was out Bert's Garden hunting in my saddle gear for my first sit, my actual first sit of the whole entire year. I had 3 doe walk by, a little cat walk by, like a house cat, a bear, not a coyote. It was a little bobcat. All walked by on the same trail. Everything went the same way except the house cat and the little bobcat. Everything walked that same exact trail. All that was in the same day within like 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what's going on? Like, why is this happening right now? Any other time, none of this would even happen.
I don't know. It's weird.
That's definitely one of those like spots that I look for when I'm like on the big mountain or something public land and find that trail everything likes to use. Because I've noticed bears seem to act a lot like deer when it comes in terms of like flowing with landscape.
Yeah.
Like I've killed a lot of deer with a bow, just kind of looking at like, they would want to flow down this ridge this way because it gets them to this holler easier than it would be if they went straight off the side of it over here, or if they, tried to go down this, then they'd have to make a big circle like that. But if they kind of follow this elevation line, they can dip around and then just flow right up that next ridge. So,
and deer really like thickets too, because I've heard you say
they do.
Because I've heard you talk about it. All the deer that the bigger bucks. Because I've noticed too, like I found a new spot on this mountain that I hunt. I found a real pretty spot, put my tree stand on. I had a feeder there. Yeah. Bucks weren't showing up. You go over the hill and find a thicket with an old logging trail on it, put a camera up, and you got 130, 140, 150 deer trail. And I'm like, I'm just 50 yards up the mountain in a pretty spot, and I find a thicket and they live in it. It's almost like, and I've noticed too, bigger bucks too, they don't like walking too far.
No.
They find them a nice thicket where they can see anything. They can lay bed down. There's nothing can get behind them. They lay in that thicket so you can't see them. And I've noticed a lot on these big mountains and stuff that they love them big green thickets.
Oh, yeah, that's one thing. Like if I'm gonna hunt, I don't ever really hunt deer in early season because of that. Like I'll typically wait until they start rutting, and that way, whenever they run the doe outside of it, you have a better chance of catching them out and away from that thicket. But I mean, I've shot a couple deer with a couple bucks with a bow, like on feed trees, but I won't ever try to go hunt a buck in October because most of the time he's in that thick, nasty stuff.
Yeah.
And it's hard to get to them because they're bedded in a spot to where they can see smell or hear anything they need to see or hear or smell. And then when you go in there to get set up, they're gone. They know to slip out of it. And I won't ever fool with them until gun season comes in, just so, I have a chance of getting them coming out of there looking for does or coming out of there running the doe, pushing does.
Do you do anything with scent? Do you use any kind of like tinks or?
This is the first year I've ever like experimented with it. I used it out in Eastern Virginia, and actually the buck that I killed out there, that real funky one with the big spike on one side, I'm pretty sure he was coming to that. I had a scent drag with some, like the doe in heat estrus, I guess is what it's called.
Yeah.
And had it on a scent drag, and I was afraid of him coming behind me. So I drug it up the hill behind me, but then I was like, I'll go hang it up this little tree right in front of me. And I'm pretty sure, because the way the thermals worked on that little ridge is it's a big creek that goes up like this, and then there's these little ridges that kind of follow out as these real big steep faces, and then there'd be a ridge and it'd come up and it'd flatten out for a long ways until it went up into private land. Then there's a pine thicket right there. And a deer would come out of that pine thicket, either come down the creek or come up the side of that ridge. Well, if you're up on the top of that ridge, your thermals blow straight into that pine thicket. But you literally walk a tree back, and it's blowing down into the creek behind you. So I went and hung that scent drag up a couple trees above me and then dropped back down over the hill, that's one reason I like the one stick too is for gun hunting, because I got like 35, 40 foot up in that tree.
Yeah, I was
going
to ask you if you like the one stick. Yeah. I was gonna see if you like the one sticking.
That's one thing I do want to try out one day, just to see if I like it better or not.
It's definitely harder to learn because you really got to learn to let the ropes do everything. Don't try to fight the ropes. You have to let the ropes do the work, or you're just going to fight yourself for about 30 minutes, and it's very tiresome.
Is it quicker getting up though, or?
It's for me it is, but I don't ever use the sticks anymore. Yeah. So if I was more practiced with the sticks, I could probably I could probably one stick just as fast as I could put, regular sticks up, because in 3 runs I could probably get 25, 30 feet. Yeah. I don't try to stretch out my runs as much as I could. I could get 30 feet every single time in 3 runs if I just tried to stretch out every inch I could whenever I was going up. But I usually just stay within a real comfortable range. It makes it quicker and easier to get the tree. Yeah. And if I'm bow hunting, I don't ever go above 20, 25 feet anyway. But if I'm gun hunting, a lot of times if I want to get somewhere where I can just see when the leaves come off, I'll find a big old straight poplar or something with no limbs in it for a long ways, and my rappel rope's 50 foot. And I've only ever been 50 foot one time, and that was over in Eastern Virginia, and I got field edge and climbed. I just kept climbing because I wanted to be able to see up over this little roll and up the edge of the woods out in this like thick brush, and then I wanted to be able to see up the other way. So I just kept climbing and kept climbing and kept climbing and kept climbing and kept climbing. And finally, I got up to this big fork in the tree, and I was trying to get to it, and I felt a bunch of weight on my saddle, and I looked down, and my pull-up rope is 50 foot too. Well, I looked down, and my muzzleloader's coming up off the ground, and I was like, oh crap, I'm at 50 foot already. So I finally just hung my platform in and got sitting there, and that wind, just a little bit of wind that was blowing, I was sitting there going, like that, just going back and forth in that tree. And I ended up hearing a deer that night, but it never came to where I could see it because it was way in the woods, and I was up right on the edge of that field. But yeah, when it comes to, I like it the most for bow hunting though, because I like it most for if I'm gonna hunt out a tree. That's my favorite setup, just because I like to be mobile as mobile as possible.
Yeah.
I don't hardly ever hunt hang-on stands unless it's just like if I'm gonna hunt, I'm going to be going at it, you know, all day, or I have certain spots in mind. And whenever you start limiting yourself with that, like recurve or whatever, you know, if they come in 30 yards and I didn't feel comfortable the night before, I need to get 10, 10, 15 yards closer to that trail. I need to be able to get in that next tree. If I just got a hang on stand there, now I got to go in there, take the hang on down and move it up a tree. Whatever. And it's just, you're going in there beating and banging around, hang on, and then, whenever I could just come out that night, take my stuff with me, and then go in there the next day, just climb that tree in front of me, and then deer come out the same trail over 10 yards now instead of 30. And now I got a better shot. That's one reason I really like it. But also shooting a stick bow out of a climber if it's where it's got the rails on it, I don't know how many deer I've tried to draw back on, or foxes, coyotes, whatever it was. And I tried to draw back, and my bottom limb is sitting there hitting that friggin' rail of that climber.
Yeah.
And it's so annoying. And because you got a 64-inch bow, it's almost as tall as you are. I mean, it's more than 5 foot, and most bows are around 5 foot or more. Most bows are going to be 60 inches or more, and it's so hard to shoot out of that. When I'm shooting out of a saddle, I can shoot all the way around a tree. I can shoot under me. I can shoot above me if I have to. I mean, you can actually get the shot opportunity out of it.
Yeah.
And that's the one reason I really like it.
Which saddle do you like?
Which one are you running right now?
Yeah, which one are you running?
The one I used this year was that, what's it called? The tethered ultra lock or the lockdown. They changed the name of it, but I can't remember what it was before and what they changed the name to it. I think it's the ultra lock.
Yeah.
But it's the ultra lock SD or something like that, because I didn't want the big pouches on it. I just wanted the base saddle. And because the first year I used a tethered phantom, and I'm not like the biggest dude in the world. I'm about like 5'11", but I'm kind of stocky in that area, in my butt and hip area, and it just wasn't wide enough.
Yeah.
The butt pad wasn't big enough. And if it was under my butt, it was below my lower back, and I couldn't ever get it to where I wanted it to be. So then last year I ran a cruiser. Well, it was a lot more comfortable just because it was so much bigger, but it would where it was bigger, it was harder to wear in woods. So I was like, what am I going to do? Well, then I seen that Ultralock, and they had the version where there wasn't none of those big zipper pockets on the side.
Yeah.
That's the saddle. So I tried it out, and it's very comfortable. But a lot of saddle hunting though is how you adjust it. Comfort comes from adjustment of it more than it is the saddle itself. It's where your bridge is adjusted to, how long your bridge is, where your tether height is, and
that's the thing that I'm going to have to learn. Because when I first got into it, every time I would have my tethered set, it would feel like I was leaning back way too far. Then I would tighten it, and I was too close, and I would have it too high, too low.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The biggest thing. I run that XOP because when I first got into it, I was like, I'm going to go cheaper. If I actually like it, cool. And then eventually I'll upgrade. If I don't like it, maybe $300-400 on my whole entire setup. I wasn't mad about it.
Oh, yeah.
So it wasn't bad. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to run this for a while, and if I like it, I'll end up upgrading, which I do want to upgrade. Don't know what I'm going to upgrade to yet, but that could be possibly next year, maybe year after. But I'm definitely going to start with getting different tethers and everything like that first, because that's cheaper than getting a whole new saddle.
Oh,
but my saddle, dude, it's a harness and saddle, so it goes over top of the shoulder. Oh, man.
See, I run a trophy line, and I love it.
It's trophy line, man. I like it a lot.
I've heard they're really comfortable.
Yeah.
I haven't ever tried one, but I've heard.
I haven't tried it, but I've seen it and I've held it a couple times. It's It's nice. It's definitely worth the money that you're spending on it.
Because that's what I was thinking. Because like I said, my buddy John Mabry, he does Saddle Cartel on Facebook.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Man, if you're going to do it, go ahead and spend the money.
Spend the money.
Get something that's nice, comfortable, and you won't regret it." And I got that one. I was like, "Yeah, I would like to try others and maybe do the one sticking one time." But right now, that trophy line, it's nice.
Which I think that, like, other than go ahead and get like my toes and everything like that upgraded, I think the first thing I'm going to buy is just the saddle.
Yeah.
And then slowly get their sticks.
Because honestly, with doing this is my first year doing it, but I think the saddle was probably the most important thing to me. Because if you can't get comfortable,
then it's not worth it.
No, it's not.
Like you're not going to enjoy. You're not even going to enjoy being in a tree if you can't get comfortable. Like that first day we went out, you was just like, of course you're going to be kind of skittish because that was your first ever getting.
It was hard for me to trust my ropes.
That's the hard part. That was the hardest part.
Because I fell out of a lock-on one time, and then after I fell out of a lock-on, I was like terrified.
I was the same way.
Yeah, and then I put my tether and everything. I got hooked in. I'm like, can I leave my lineman rope on? I was like scared to death. Can I leave this on?
I'm not gonna lie to you. It's my brother right here. Oh, it was like I've known this dude for a long time. We've had a lot of good moments, but that might have been one of the funniest things I've ever done. Like it was hilarious.
Because I was like, can I please leave this on? He's like, dude, it's your saddle. Do what you want.
I was trying which his saddle, his lineman and everything was kind of so different than mine was. Because with XOP, you have to know what the knots are, and you got your cinch knot that you can.
Oh, the Crucix.
Yeah, that's like you got that on there, and then but mine was different though. On both ends, it had a loop on it, so I could connect it however I wanted to. On his, it was completely different. So I kind of set him up wrong the first time.
Yeah,
but that's my bad because I didn't know how his set up. I was like, man, listen, like I can set you up, but it's gonna be.
You got me in the tree.
I said I can get you in the tree. I can't teach you what John can teach you, or was it John or Joe?
John.
Okay, John. Yeah. I can't teach what he can teach you, but I can teach you what Cameron knows and what Cameron's seen on Instagram, on Facebook, and off of YouTube videos, and what I kind of made my own. Like the way that I do it. Like that day, I didn't have any of my ropes. I had only 2.
Yeah.
And I didn't have what I needed at all, but I made do because I've gotten to the point where I'm so comfortable with it that I could have a dry rotted rope and I'd be comfortable with it. Like my gear at that point in time, I lost all my ropes. I don't know what I did with them or nothing, but I ended up having to buy some more, and we're good now. Yeah. But that day, dude, it was a day.
Yeah.
But man, it was the funniest thing ever.
Yeah, because John showed me how to do it with his. He was like, here, put it on. I'll teach you. He said, I'll just get you like 2 foot off the ground. And he was like, trust your ropes. I just watched him jump off of it, and he's like dangling. He's like, I'm over 200 pounds, and I can just dangle off this thing. And I was like, man, this is nice.
That's when I first realized, when I first did that, I wasn't one stick off the ground. Dude, I was, at my parents' front yard, I was pretty high up the tree. Yeah. And dude, I was wearing Hey Dudes. Stupidest decision ever. Hey Dudes and basketball shorts. Don't recommend it. I was on my platform and I was kind of trying to reach around the tree to like shoot my bow. Well, act like I was shooting my bow. I didn't have my bow in my hand, but I was acting like I was shooting my bow, just kind of getting a feel for it. I was getting comfortable. I slipped. I was dangling, man. I started to panic. I got a wedgie. It was awful. Like I didn't know what to do.
I can tell you a really good story.
I'm 250 pounds.
And
and these, they're not very thick. These ropes are holding me up.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I could tell you a really good one. I was
comfortable with it.
Yeah. We were well, there's 2 of them. It was right the first year that I bought it and I started one sticking. Well, I would go out in the backyard and practice.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't take my backpack or nothing with me. I would just have, my plat or like my stick and my saddle and my repeller. That's all I had, so I was bringing it. And I was climbing a tree one day, and I was trying to see how high I could get in between runs. And I reached down to get my stick, and I freaking dropped it. So now I'm sitting up in the tree, and I don't have a platform to get set up on anything to rappel out of the tree. So I had to call my mom, and I was like, "Hey, can you come up here and pick this stick up for me and throw it up here to me?" Well, you'd think I'd learned from my mistakes there, but that year we went to Kentucky during September to do that early season, try to get a velvet buck. Well, the first day I tried to get up in the stand, for some reason I was like, "Oh, I'll climb without my backpack and I'll pull it up with me." My backpack with my camera stuff and my saddle stuff and everything in it probably weighs like 50 pounds.
Same.
And I went to try to pull that thing up, and the carabiner I had tied to the end of the rope come off.
Oh,
So
man.
now I'm in a poison ivy coated tree, and my platform is in my backpack. My rappel rope is in, or no, my platform's with me, but my rappel rope is in my backpack, so I can't get out of the tree. And my buddy is 3 miles away, and I had to call him and be like, "Hey man, can you come and like get this rappel rope out of my pack and throw it up to me? I can't get out of the tree." And he had to leave where he was at and walk all the way down this road to get to where I was and come in and find me. And then after that, I was like, I'm never doing that again. But that one was, I had to sit there for like 3 hours and wait on him because I left that freaking thing on the ground. And it was just, after that, I was like, I ain't doing that again. But I almost did it a couple times. But if I
That's
was
how
to,
it was the first
oh,
time I went saddle hunting by myself.
yeah.
I was like, man, this is gonna be nice. And I go over there. I didn't tie my bow off. I didn't even I didn't tie my backpack off. I'm up in the tree. I'm like, where's my bow hanger? I'm like looking for my bow hanger, and I look down and I see my bag, and I was like, I'll just pull my bag up. My bow hanger's in there. I'm like, where's my rope at? Didn't have my rope. Had to climb all the way back down the tree. Then I tied my bag off, get back up there, and I'm like, where's my bow? I forgot my bow at the bottom. I'm like, I ain't got nothing.
We did that. I think it was about 2-3 weeks ago when we hunted together. We was in like it was kind of a V tree set up, but
It was like a double tree.
Yeah, it was one of those double trees, but we was set up on the same tree because one tree that I was going to get in on the left side, it was kind of from the front side, it was perfect. But I wanted to be on the back side, so I was working the camera specifically this day, so I could have a better angle if a deer walked in the way we thought it was going to walk in. Dude, we forgot everything on the ground.
Yeah.
Like, my backpack was on the ground. It had my bow hook. It had my camera arm mount. Dude, it had everything. And then there was stuff, even his backpack was on the ground.
Yeah.
We didn't have anything.
Oh,
And that whole situation, that whole day was just, it was great, but dumb.
Yeah.
Like, we put ourselves in so many situations.
It's
the
easy to do
biggest,
because all you think about, you're like, I got to get up here,
Yeah.
get set up before daylight. Then you get up there and you're sweating because you done rushed in there.
Heck, we was already late that morning, which it wasn't our fault.
Yeah.
But we was already late that morning, and
Then you finally find the tree,
up
then
there.
you look at it and you're like, well, one of us can be over here, then
Yeah.
the tree's crooked, and you're over here trying to fight this tree. It's deer
was
hunting.
it was something.
oh
It's
yeah,
really happening.
it's definitely something because like I still forget whenever whenever I wrap my rappel rope around a tree, I have to take my pull-up rope and tie around the back end of it so that I can pull it down after I get down.
Yeah.
I I think I left the rappel rope in the tree 2 or 3 times this year. After this is my third year doing it, and I still just getting down forgot to tie off that little pull-up rope to the back end of it, and I had to climb back up the tree
I think
and go
this year
get
makes
my.
my second year doing saddle hunting. I forget stuff every time.
Yeah.
I ain't gonna lie.
Oh, it's
But
it's definitely
I'm so
different.
slow at getting up the tree too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so slow.
and see, I think that's like saddle hunting's very nice because
Yeah.
if you find deer on a trail or if it's during rut, you can get off. Like,
Yeah.
But there's lock-ons. I like being able to, like, if you wanted to, if you're on a private piece of property or something, you can just have your lock on it there. Leave your bow if you want to. Everything's there. Then you don't have to rush. You can get there at a certain time. But
There is some days like this place that I hunted urban in this year, I found the perfect tree. I wasn't gonna put a stand up there because there's just no point in doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So I found the perfect spot to go on, perfect little trail. I got a tree. I left it in there for a couple of days. I pretty much left it as basically a preset. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
one day I left my bow in there for like 3 days. I'd go hunt, leave it in there. Go hunt, leave it in there. I mean, God would come back to the same spot. And I had to carry nothing,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah, that's getting
it came in handy. But I
nice.
mean, that's another reason why I do like saddle hunting because you can
Mm-hmm.
literally go anywhere.
Yeah.
You could be like
Oh
me.
yeah.
I don't like his tree. There's a tree 5 foot away from me. I like that one better.
Or you get
Mm-hmm.
to, like, one morning, you could be hunting and look over the mountain. You can see
Yeah,
bucks chasing does over a mountain. You can just
exactly,
walk down there and
Yeah.
get up
exactly.
in a tree. And honestly, it really doesn't matter what tree you
They
really get
don't.
in.
They
Mm-hmm.
don't. You can
Yeah,
get
you can.
super. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I have figured out that you can get in some pretty small
You can
trees.
get in small
I'm not
trees,
gonna
Oh
big
do it.
trees, but yeah.
'Cause I'm a big boy.
yeah.
That's
Oh yeah.
sketch. But
Oh
like
yeah.
you can definitely do it though. That's another reason why I do like it very
Yeah.
much though.
Yeah,
Big
you can.
trees.
You can get. There was one tree I hunted in this year, and I have a for my stick on my one stick. I've just got a big long piece of and steel that it's called a full bury, but you just bury it back in itself. And I mean that tree was this big round,
Yeah.
and because I could fit that, which I mean I don't know how in the world I got my tether on it because I mean it was huge. Like my tether, I had to leave my bridge as long as it would go, and I had to keep the tether like right here
Yeah.
so that I could get up the tree. But because you know I gotta use my tether when I'm doing the one stick. But whenever I was climbing it, and then like I get up there and I try to put my platform around the tree, and the strap's like here to here. I can't even get the buckle close to it, so I
Yeah.
just had to hunt off the top of the stick. But you know, I mean, it wasn't comfortable at all. But in that situation, I was like, this is the tree where it's going to work in, and it did. And I didn't see a deer all day, but uh, it was like that was the tree I needed to be in if they would have came out that morning.
Yeah.
So you know, I could get in it just because you know my ropes were big enough just to get around the tree. As in, like if I had a self climber, I'd have had to get in a tree like 25 yards away from the trail I wanted to be on,
Yep.
and you know I wouldn't have had a good of a setup to shoot. Because I mean, even with a compound, I'd want to shoot a deer 10 yards and in every time I shoot. So
Yeah.
I'd want it to be 10, 15 yards. That seems to be like sweet spot. And you know, if you're a self climber, you don't want to take away that advantage of being able to get up in a tree, but you also want to be able to get into the tree you want to get in rather than having to be like, well, this is the only one my climber fits on, so I'll go get it now. When it was a gun, you know, maybe it don't matter, but when it comes to bow hunting, you know, I want to be 10, 15 yards at a time.
Yeah.
So you want to be able to get into that tree that's like, that's the tree I need to be.
One last question for me before we start wrapping everything up. What's your next plan, man? Like, what's your next hunt? Like, you going to go for another little backpacking trip, or you just going to do something
I'm
simple?
probably, as of right now, probably be trying to kill my bear.
Yeah.
Because I I do really enjoy the rendering the bear fat. You know, I use that to cook with all year if I can
Yeah.
get enough. Uh, Most time I've got a few people that kill them, and then I usually go take them and cut them up stuff. But I'll tear up some bear loin or some bear burger.
Yeah.
So
I love me some bear burger now.
I've never
oh
had it.
Hey, you're coming
it's
to
really
the
good.
4th of July party, buddy.
Yeah,
Listen,
I've never had it.
that's delicious, man. I love
Oh
it.
So I've always thought bear was so disgusting. I killed one bear one
I
time, and
love it.
I cut that thing. I'm used
oh
to.
they stink.
Oh, they
Oh, and
stink.
I'm so used to gutting a deer, and I always cut through the skin first, and then
Yeah.
cut me a little slit and use my gut hook to get the rest. I finally open it up, and I'm looking. I'm like, "What is all this?" And it looked like it was that much fat.
Yeah.
And then I cut through it. Then it looked like there was more fat. I'm like, "Oh my god!" And it was all over my hands. It was all over everything. I was like, "I'll never do this again."
Yeah.
Then I skinned it out, and done everything. And it looked like I killed like a 200-pound bear and got 5 pounds of meat off of it. And I'm like, "How is this even possible?"
I will say this, though. It sucks, but they're so good.
Oh yeah,
It's
I've
delicious.
always been like as of when I started like really cooking a lot, that's whenever I was like, oh yeah, if I'm gonna eat something, I want it. Like if I
Yeah.
wanna, if I'm gonna pick two things to hunt, that's what I always tell people. I'm like, I'm not even much of a deer hunter. Like if I had to pick two things to hunt, I'm shooting bear for food and the fat to cook with and stuff like that, and I'm hunting turkeys for fun.
Yeah.
You know, deer's just kind of like hey, it's in for 3 months, and I get to go chase them around with 3 buck tags and, pretty much as many doe tags as I can feel, where you just buy the bonus tags.
Yeah.
I just get to go chase them for 3 months, so, I can't complain there. But if I had to choose one to eat, it'd be bear, for sure.
Yeah, there's just something about chasing a whitetail.
Yeah, I love
Oh,
it.
yeah.
Is there
Oh,
something
yeah.
about it? Because
It's a pain. I love it.
It could be like 20 degrees outside, and you're warm, whatever.
Yeah.
As soon as you see that buck, it's like your nose starts snotting, shaking, and then
Dude,
I get tore up.
I'm not that with the doe.
me too.
Oh, yeah.
And it's
Oh,
like,
if
no
you
matter
watch
what,
a video.
you could pull back, make a perfect
Yep.
shot, and you still second guess yourself. You could watch
I
the deer
don't know
fall,
if it
and
was
you're
good
like,
or not.
it dropped, it done
I think
this.
it was a little far back, a little high.
Yeah.
That's one thing. I don't really second guess myself anymore. Like if I have a gut instinct, but I will second guess myself if like I don't know, like if I shoot a deer quartered away, I
Yeah.
second guess myself, or if I shoot it quartered two and it don't drop, I second guess myself. If it's broadside, I'm like, oh yeah, And most of the time when I shoot light as knockout on a bow, I can see where the arrow goes.
Yeah.
But
I love the knock.
but if you can, like if you watch, the one I freaked out on the most this year was probably the smaller of the 3 bucks that I killed.
Yeah.
And it was just because there was so much. There was like 4 years I'd been trying to figure this deer out because they get hunted with dogs out there, so it's hard to pattern them. They don't pattern. They don't stop. They constantly move. They're constantly just kind of moving through the woods. They don't stop and feed. Really hard to hunt, like in the woods with just a gun or a bow. And when I killed that deer, I had like 4 years of just being frustrated at not seeing any deer. And it all come out, and I kind of flipped out on that one. But then probably the second most was the second one I shot with the bow. My biggest problem with a bow, if you watch any of the videos, you'll be able to tell when I let that arrow go, if it hits where I want it to, I either say, oh yes, or oh yeah, baby, or I'll say, oh crap, if it hits away from where I wanted it to.
Yeah.
And it's just reflex. I can't ever keep myself from doing it. But that first one I shot this year, when I let that arrow go, I watched that thing bury up right at the top, like right in like midway in that vital V of the shoulder, and I watched it bury up right there, and I knew it come out like right at the bottom of the shoulder, and I don't remember any of it. It just goes out of my mouth,
Yeah.
and I was like, oh yeah, man! Like the arrow hadn't even hit the deer yet, and I was like, oh yeah, baby, because I could just see where it was going.
Brother, with that being said, man, like we really appreciate you coming on here because
Yeah,
when
no
I
problem.
texted you like at 10 o'clock, like 10 o'clock tonight, I didn't think he was gonna be able to come on, but
And we definitely need to do it again.
oh yeah, we definitely need to.
Oh,
Man.
yeah.
Like this was great.
I really want to talk about like it was hard for me to want to be like, all right, let's keep on track about the buck and not want to
It was hard for me to
not
stay on
drift
track
off
too.
into bow hunting because like I could talk about big mountain tactics. I could talk about bow hunting, all that stuff. And it's hard for me to just like try to stay on one track.
I feel that.
Yeah, because next time I definitely would like to get into the like mountain
tactics
and stuff.
Then
go
ahead.
Yeah, because a lot of people, I've had a lot of people message me like, "Man, you're from West Virginia. We would love to learn how to hunt. We're from North Carolina, and we have a lease in McDowell County, or like whatever. We would love to learn how you do a few things because hunting the mountains, it's hard.
Yes.
It's next time we'll definitely have to talk about that.
It's a
maybe
different
one day
beast.
we'll be able to get a collab between both our channels, podcast, and then the Brown Down Hunting crew, and I guess it's just you on your channel, right?
Pretty much. Yeah.
Well, then
I go with a bunch of people, but
yeah, we're gonna get us a video going like with a we gotta get our gear going right though. With like we definitely gotta go backpacking sometime, man. Because maybe sometime next year. I got a lot of stuff going on next year, but maybe a weekend trip next year or something like that. But
yeah, we definitely need to get together.
Definitely.
And maybe next time we can do the podcast in person.
Oh yeah, that'd be 10 times better, honestly. Say because
now, that would definitely.
We're working on the room right now to get set up, and then heck, we could go just about anywhere really do podcasts, honestly.
Yeah.
We're going to give a shout out to our sponsors right quick. One of them is Sevr Broadheads. We're repping their gear right now. Listen, we have not got the chance to really test our broadheads. We've shot them practice wise and everything. Really good broadheads so far from what we can see. I'm gonna be shooting which one was it? The 2-inch cut,
2.0s,
the 2.0s, and then
I'm repping their new 1.5 hybrid with the bleeder blades.
Then we're both gonna try the 1.75s as well. But listen, so far they're really good. Like just looking at them wise and shooting them, they shoot amazing. Another one is Drawn Archery. They make really good bowstrings. I've repped those all year last year. I got a new bow this year. Didn't really get the chance to. Didn't need new strings this year, but I'm going to get a pair next year. They're really good, and we have a discount code for that. It is BTB 10 for a 10% discount on all their strings. And they have these really cool wind devices as well, but that's besides the point. But also, Drawn Archer, we will be doing a giveaway. We're going to be setting a goal for either 60 followers on our YouTube channel, on either one of the YouTube channels, or 60 followers on our podcast channel.
And I have to shout out another one too. Fourth Arrow also gave us a discount code. I'll link that.
Forgot about that
down below. They also gave us a nice discount code for camera arms, tripod stuff.
It's really nice.
Oh, it's so really light. Nice. Them things are super, super light. So we'll link that discount code below.
Yeah, and go ahead and shout out your channel one more time, man. We'll put that down in the description below as well.
Oh yeah, it's just feel the spirit. There's probably going to be other stuff that pops up with it, but you just type in like hunting beside of it or something, and come right up, and then
we'll try to put a direct link to it too.
Yeah, if it's I got an Instagram page and a Facebook page as well. So
awesome. Okay. With that being said, guys, we really appreciate y'all tuning in to Beyond the Blind. This will be our second podcast. We meant to say that earlier in the video, but definitely didn't think about it. But this is our second podcast. The first one will be going up probably a week before this one. With that being said, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and just we really do appreciate all the love and support we've gotten so far. And this is just our second video, but we really do appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Peace.